stakeholders, coaches, governors, and general managers. Those are the people calling all the shots. Many WNBA fans are calling out the referee problem, and they are demanding answers and they are demanding changes. It seems like a lot of them are kind of being told what to do. There are other people pulling the strings above them. What actually happens is that we have a competition committee for stakeholders, coaches, governors, and general managers, and that competition committee is the committee that dictates the state of the game. Officiating in the WNBA became as hot button of an issue as any. Heated debates surrounding the league's physicality dominated the headlines, particularly when Indiana Fever star rookie Caitlin Clark was subject to several intentional fouls. The referees who were refereeing the Fever and Liberty game, that one of the referees seems like his only experience was actually refereeing high school games.
If the WNBA is not rigged, they're doing a great job of making it look like it's rigged. Because if you guys didn't see the referees literally, they made a bad call. And if you guys have ever played sports, you know that like when a referee knows they've screwed up, they will do everything they can to not talk to the players. They are running away from the Indiana Fever players. As you can see, like it's not just Caitlin Clark, it's Sophie Cunningham. And he's like, no, I'm not looking. No. And you know bad refs, because again, I live in a country where there are good refs and the good refs know who they are, but the standard of refereeing is absolutely shocking. And like I've seen referees be talking to coaches, and then mid-conversation, just when they know they're in the wrong, mid-conversation just turn around and start ignoring players. If it wasn't for the fact that the WNBA is a professional sports league, this would be funny if this WNBA was not a pro sports league. Straight up. It would be funny.
He's second that clip hit social media. Everything flipped upside down. At first, it looked like any high-stakes WNBA showdown. Tight defense, the score tied, the game hanging by a thread. Caitlin Clark, the league's brightest star, had the ball with 1 second left. One defender stood in her way. She drove, contact was made. And then, nothing. No whistle, no buzzer, just stunned silence. But what followed wasn't just confusion, it was chaos. Instant replays ran on loop from every possible angle. The footage clearly showed Clark getting grabbed, shoved, hacked across the arm, and shoulder checked. All within that one final possession. The refs missed everything, or worse, they ignored it. The fans saw it. The players knew it. Even the commentators froze, unsure how to explain what they just witnessed. The ref just feet away, stood motionless, and let it all slide. Now Clark taking hits without a call wasn't new, but this time it wasn't subtle, and the world was watching. Clips flooded every platform. Slow motion edits broke it down frame by frame. Red circles, freeze frames, all exposing what fans were beginning to say louder and louder. This wasn't bad officiating. This was intentional, and it was always happening when Clark was on the floor. Then behind closed doors, things really started boiling over. WNBA executives reportedly got flooded with messages, emails, phone calls, angry social posts. Media outlets were demanding answers. Retired players weighed in. Active ones didn't speak publicly, but you could feel the tension. They were watching too. What started as outrage over one missed call had now evolved into something bigger and uglier. Just a few days later, the WNBA quietly removed the ref at the center of the scandal. No statement, no media availability, just gone. He was pulled from the next game and quietly erased from the upcoming schedule. The league didn't name him, but fans didn't need them to. Internet detectives had already figured it out. At first, people thought this was just the WNBA doing damage control, but then the real bombshell dropped. A leaked transcript began circulating online. A private internal report never meant for the public. No one knew who released it, but the contents were explosive. According to the leak, the suspended referee had privately confessed. He had been pressured by high-ranking league officials to avoid calling fouls, especially in games involving major stars. And when Caitlin Clark was playing, he claimed he was offered money to help control the game flow, and the person named in that report as applying the pressure, Cathy Engelbert. the WNBA commissioner herself, the top boss, the one responsible for upholding the league's credibility. Now, she was at the heart of what looked like a full-blown conspiracy. This wasn't just about one player anymore. This wasn't just a refereeing error. This was about power, manipulation, and possible corruption all the way at the top. The sports world exploded. News outlets coast to coast ran the story. Fans were furious. Coaches were caught off guard by sudden press questions. And for the first time, even Clark's teammates and peers began speaking out. Not vague, not subtle, but direct. Through it all, Engelbert stayed silent. No interview, no comment, and that silence, it spoke volumes. The league scrambled behind the scenes. PR teams went into crisis mode. Quiet meetings were held out of sight, but it was too late. The narrative was already out, and the damage was done. And then, just 48 hours later, the biggest twist yet. NBA Commissioner Adam Silver, on one of the most powerful figures in global basketball, made an emergency statement. He confirmed what fans had feared. An official investigation had been launched. No more rumors, no more whispers. This scandal wasn't going away. The evidence was undeniable. The referee had testified under oath, and according to early findings, Cathy Engelbert had clearly crossed a line. NBA Commissioner Adam Silver didn't hesitate. In a stunning announcement, he revealed that Engelbert was being immediately suspended while a full investigation played out. This was uncharted territory for professional sports. A sitting commissioner benched, a referee blowing the whistle under oath, and the world watching every second. The shockwave hit hard. Silver's decision to sideline Cathy Engelbert didn't just rattle the WNBA, it sent shockwaves through every major sports league in America. Because this wasn't just about a bad call or one controversial player. This was about trust, about transparency, about whether the games we love are even being called fairly behind the curtain. Media outlets erupted. Cameras camped outside WNBA headquarters. Former players lit up talk shows. From ESPN to CNN, the question was everywhere. What did Silver find? What had the referee actually revealed? And who else inside the league had stayed quiet while this happened? Then, more leaked details surfaced, and they were damning. Insiders revealed that the suspended referee had provided not only testimony, but receipts, screenshots, emails, internal messages between league officials. In those communications, he was allegedly instructed to ease off on certain defenders, avoid calling ticky-tack fouls, and most disturbingly, to make things harder for Caitlin Clark. It wasn't framed as an outright bribe. It never is. But the implication was clear. The game wasn't being called fairly, it was being managed. And at the center of that management, Cathy Engelbert. To the public, she was the face of progress. The commissioner credited with expanding the WNBA's visibility and corporate partnerships. But behind closed doors, those who worked with her whispered a different story. One of obsession with control, narrative control, media control, game control. Then Caitlin Clark arrived. She didn't just join the WNBA, she transformed it. Sellout crowds, record ratings, non-stop headlines. She brought a new spotlight the league had never experienced. But that spotlight made it harder for Engelbert to keep her grip on the narrative. Executives began speaking out anonymously. They described Engelbert as increasingly uneasy about how dependent the league had become on one star. There were internal discussions about Clark overshadowing the team dynamic, about other players being forgotten. Had it stayed in PR meetings, that concern might have been harmless, but it didn't. Instead, it allegedly spilled into game day operations, into officiating notes, tunnel conversations, and pre-game ref briefings. It wasn't about punishing Clark, it was about leveling the field by not giving her anything. No soft fouls, no superstar calls. Let her earn everything. And when the hits came, hard, frequent, and uncalled, let them go. Clark didn't back down. She kept scoring, kept creating plays, kept leading her team, even as defenders draped over her and whistles stayed silent. But eventually, the toll added up. When she finally went down with a quad strain, fans knew this wasn't some freak injury. They had seen it coming. Hit after hit, game after game, the bruises, the frustration, the moments she looked at the ref and got nothing but silence. The injury wasn't a fluke, it was a breaking point. That's when the whole system started to crack. Behind the scenes, more referees began speaking up, not publicly, but quietly, under protection. They painted a picture of a league where silence was rewarded, and speaking up came with consequences. One ref recalled being told bluntly, "Call the game tight, but not for her." Another said game reviews, meant to improve officiating, had become a weapon. If a ref gave Clark too many free throws, he got reprimanded, but if he ignored clear contact against her, nothing happened. It wasn't random, it wasn't inconsistent, it was intentional, and it was systematic. Meanwhile, fans were doing their homework too, watching clips, comparing calls, creating timelines. The truth was surfacing, and the league could no longer control the narrative. Clips began flooding social media, slowed down replays, zoom-ins, and breakdowns showing obvious missed calls, grabs to the arm, body checks, shoulder hits, and the refs just let them slide. Some of these plays had gone viral months ago, but were brushed off as part of the physical game. Now, in this new light, they painted a much darker picture. At first, the WNBA tried to stay quiet, no public response, no accountability, business as usual, but Adam Silver had already intervened, and his move, suspending Commissioner Cathy Engelbert, flipped the narrative on its head. This wasn't just a disciplinary action, this was a message. Silver drew a hard line. What happens in the WNBA impacts the integrity of basketball at every level. He wasn't going to let the league collapse under the weight of a growing scandal, and the fallout came fast. Sponsors started reaching out, wanting clarity. TV networks demanded answers. Players who'd stayed silent began stepping forward. Kelsey Mitchell, one of Caitlin Clark's closest teammates, chose her words carefully but made her point clear during a post-game presser. You've got to protect your stars. If they fall, what exactly are we building here? Charles Barkley and other NBA legends didn't hold back either. They slammed the WNBA for failing to protect Clark and suggested that Engelbert's obsession with control may have put the league's future at risk. Even Caitlin Clark spoke up despite being sidelined with injury. "I'm not asking for special treatment. I just want fair calls," she said calmly. It was measured and professional. But the frustration underneath was obvious, and by that point, the damage was already done. The league's biggest draw had been targeted, officials had played their part, and the commissioner, she now stood accused of pulling the strings. With Engelbert suspended, the WNBA was forced to look inward. This was no longer just a scandal, it was a full-blown reckoning. As more referees stepped forward and confidential files made their way into journalists' hands, the full scope began to take shape. Multiple refs testified, privately under confidentiality, that they'd received subtle but clear instructions: let the game flow, don't call everything, and when it comes to Clark, don't bail her out. But the breaking point came when the suspended referee at the center of it all gave his sworn statement. According to him, he was approached before the season even started. The directive: calls involving Caitlin Clark were to be judged with a higher tolerance. Physicality? Let it slide. Unless it was blatant, keep the whistle down. But then came the bombshell. He admitted he was paid for going along with it. That sentence turned suspicion into undeniable proof. He didn't name names, but he described the payment as a bonus tied to game flow management, and said it came from someone inside the league's upper executive tier. When pressed further, he added, "There was an understanding that I'd be aligned with how the league wanted those matchups handled." He never said Cathy Engelbert's name, but he didn't have to. The message was loud enough to shake the league to its core. Now, with the NBA's compliance division involved, the investigation shifted into high gear. They weren't just checking messages, they were tracking payments, emails, internal memos, and even executive calendar meetings. And what they found only confirmed what many feared. Several confidential memos had been sent around league leadership in the early days of Clark's rookie season. The language was clean. Talk of discipline in officiating, avoiding favoritism, and controlling perception. But to investigators, it read like a playbook, polished words, hiding intentional manipulation, and through all of it, Cathy Engelbert vanished from view. No press conferences, no comments. Her social media went silent. Her lawyers issued a single vague statement, and that was it. Meanwhile, the league that once celebrated transparency now stood knee-deep in questions it couldn't ignore. Cathy Engelbert denied all allegations, insisting she welcomed a full and fair investigation. But out in the real world, where fans, players, and headlines collide, public opinion was already shifting against her. Players were no longer holding back. Veterans began to admit they had sensed the bias for weeks, but felt powerless to challenge the system. Coaches began filing complaints after the fact, while analysts pieced together video compilations of missed calls. Every clip time-stamped, every foul clearly ignored. Together they built a digital trail that exposed something far more dangerous than a few missed whistles. A pattern of selective officiating, a pattern of neglecting Caitlin Clark's safety, and sponsors noticed. A major shoe company hit pause on a Clark-focused ad campaign. Networks that had been hyping up WNBA broadcasts with record-breaking viewership began quietly pulling back. It wasn't a boycott, but it was a red flag. Amid the chaos, one question echoed louder than the rest. What would Adam Silver do next? Suspending Engelbert had been a massive move. But fans, players, and media were demanding more than symbolic punishment. They wanted answers. They wanted change. And then, Silver did the unthinkable. He called for a public emergency summit, open to players, coaches, and the media, and promised to personally reveal the results of the investigation. No press release, no spin, just raw truth, live. When the day came, the room was packed. Journalists lined the aisles. Cameras streamed across the world. Fans tuned in by the millions. Silver stepped up to the mic with a simple but cutting opening. This investigation has revealed violations of the core values of competitive fairness. And then came the bombshell. Silver confirmed that Cathy Engelbert had indeed authorized internal communications that shaped how referees officiated games involving Caitlin Clark. No, it wasn't officially called bribery, but the intent was clear. Memos, texts, and back-channel talks had created an environment where referees were pressured to let Clark take the hits and avoid giving her the benefit of the whistle. Silver declared that the suspended referee's testimony was both credible and supported by other findings. He described the culture under Engelbert as strategically manipulative, driven by control rather than competition. Then, the moment that stunned the room. Effective immediately, Cathy Engelbert was removed as WNBA commissioner. Silence. Then, cautious applause. In her place, an interim leadership panel was announced, made up of former players, respected coaches, and industry executives. Their mission: rebuild trust. Step 1, a full audit of WNBA officiating policies. Step 2, establish an independent oversight board to evaluate referee performance beyond league influence. It wasn't a victory, not yet, but it was a start. Meanwhile, Caitlin Clark returned to the court just days later, not as a victim of the system, but as the symbol of its rebirth. Her talent had already transformed the league, but now, her presence carried something even more powerful: accountability. Every bucket, every assist, every crossover. It wasn't just basketball anymore. It was a reminder of how close the game came to losing its soul. Clark never called for Engelbert's firing. She didn't publicly criticize the league, but her silence, her toughness, and her ability to rise above it all sparked a movement she never had to lead out loud. And when she finally spoke to the media after the storm had passed, she kept it short and honest. "I just want to play the game the right way. That's all I've ever asked for. I'm glad the league is finally listening." Then she laced up her sneakers, jogged onto the hardwood, and this time, the refs called it by the book, not by the politics. Maybe, just maybe, that's how it should have always been.